Hi, everyone, and welcome to Empowering Homeschool Conversations. My name is Peggy Floyer. I'm the founder and CEO of SPED Homeschool, as well as the host of this broadcast, Empowering Homeschool Conversations, that is put on by the Ministry of SPED Homeschool. We are just excited that you are with us today. I know we're a half an hour early than our normal live broadcast time, and so just thank you for popping on early to join us. And this month, we're focusing on the topic of early education, preschool, which we know a lot of you have questions about, and we're super excited to be addressing this very early stage of homeschooling, which is now becoming more and more popular every year, especially in this special education disability segment of the homeschooling population. For a long time, a lot of our parents were really encouraged. Use the early education programs, use the public schools. They're the experts. And we're realizing over and over again, especially since the pandemic, that the people that call themselves experts aren't always the experts. It's you, the parents, who have been with your child since they've been born. And we're here to encourage you in that and encourage you if you felt called to homeschool even a struggling learner, a child with a diagnosable disability or any type of struggle, that you can homeschool preschool too. And so we're just excited that you're here with us this hour. And Julia Nalle is with us, back with us today. Julia, thank you again for popping on to our broadcast and being willing to share with us on this topic. I'm so excited to have you share just from your wealth of experience. I know that you're a veteran of 35 years of homeschooling, and you just have so much practical advice and wisdom and down to earth knowledge that you have to share. And so I'm excited to hear all the things that you have to share with our audience today. So welcome.
Thank you. So my name is Julia Nalle, but the
Oh,
first name
sorry.
it's okay. The first name is actually pronounced Julie because my parents named me Julia and they decided to call me Julie. Don't
Oh,
ask. Yeah, that was
wow.
one of those bloopers. But anyway, and then Knowles rhymes with small and tall. My husband's tall, I'm small. So anyway, I have 5 kids, 2 by and both of those are moved on out of the house. One of them just got married this past year.
Oh,
And I have
congrats.
3 kids who are adopted, and all 3 are from Ukraine, which is very near and dear to our hearts.
Yeah.
We're like soaked into Ukraine news every day,
Mm,
all day. Have lots of friends over there. Pray a lot for Ukraine.
mm.
Yes. So I have a nursing license, which is like I'm a little pretend nurse from years ago. I don't do much nursing. I have an education degree, and I have a master's of arts with counseling, Old Testament, and pastoral ministries.
Wow, that's a
And
great
I have
mix.
taught for 35 to 40 plus years. And then my husband and I also own and co-write BiblioPlan, which is a history literature curriculum for
Mm,
kindergarten through 12th. So I kind of have all of that.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm excited for you to talk about pre-K, and we're going to kind of cover pre-K through second grade. And so what makes you so passionate? Because I know when we've scheduled this broadcast like last year, and because you said that this was something you were super passionate about. So where does that passion come from?
Um, for a lot of reasons. One, because nobody was talking about it. Like if you go to homeschool
Mm-hmm.
conventions, there's not a lot of people that were addressing what do you do with the littles. And so, and I
Right.
love littles.
Mm.
The 7 and under is my love. I love that. It's when my
Oh.
degree was in, when I was an education major. I love their
Mhm.
joy. I love their
Mhm.
honesty. I love how
Yeah.
gullible they are. You can get them to believe anything. Yesterday I was speaking at a school, and after I finished speaking, my husband and I were kind of quietly leaving, and this little 5-year-old came flying down the hall all by herself, wrapped her arms around me and said, thank you. And I was just, that
Oh.
just was so cool. I just love them. They are so cute. They love mystery. They love silly. They love stories. They love pretend. Um,
Yeah.
I remember being a little, so and in a lot of ways I feel like that's my qualification for talking about littles, is because I was a
Mm.
little once. I remember what it was like. I remember playing toy soldiers and
Mm,
dressing up with my sister and turning my dollhouse into a hospital. I remember learning to read. And I remember the stress of learning to read because we were in a very
mm,
high functioning, high stressful school that really
mm.
pushed it. And I remember
Oh.
being stressed over reading. I remember learning
Mhm.
how to swim. I remember swinging on the swings.
Mm,
Um, I as I said, I have 5 kids, so I have kind of gone through the little stage with all 5 of them, even though my
right.
adopted kids are older.
Mm,
When we got them, they still went through the little stage. Every adopted child
yeah.
comes in emotionally a baby, and so we did it with them. Um,
Mm.
I've taught littles over and over again. It's probably the age of choice. Whenever I'm given a choice of what do you want to teach, I'll go for the littles. And my
Oh.
husband and I have also written curriculum. So with
Mm,
our
mhm,
curriculum from K to 12, we have a whole part of it that is for the littles. So
mm. Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome because starting out, and I think the one thing that really resonated with me that you talked about was that stress, and then understanding that stress even as a young child when teaching and learning becomes something that is pushed, versus in the child feeling that. I don't think we often think about that, but that is a really good point that you made, that is transferable if we have that anxiety or that agenda that is maybe beyond just the working with the child. And too often that's the public school and the private school, they have that set agenda because they're on a timeline, and that makes it difficult, especially for those strugglers.
yep.
So yeah. Before we go on to the next question, I do want to remind our viewers, if you're joining us live, just know that you can make comments, you can put questions in the feed, whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook. We want you to be part of this conversation. So definitely put those there, and we'll be happy to interact with you. We're going to save the questions for the end, and then we'll address those when we get to the end of this conversation. So yeah, but we're super happy that you're with us. And yes, those are great qualifications, Julie. And I just, that it's so exciting to glean from your knowledge. I'm sure there's been some mishaps probably along the way.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have flubbed parenting many times. I actually apologize to my oldest a lot. Like, I'm
Oh,
so
I do too.
sorry for all the things that I put you through. Yeah, so this talk is not coming from a perspective of I'm an expert. It's coming
Hmm.
from a perspective of I have learned some things in life as a 60-year
Yeah.
old looking back.
Yeah. Yeah. That is a great perspective, because I think oftentimes we look at these conversations and we're like, oh my goodness. Or I have these conversations with people like you, and I'll go in the back of my mind and go, well, I just really messed up my kids even more than I knew I had.
Yep.
But we don't want to approach it like that. We learn as God allows us to learn, and He has a lot of grace with us, and we need to have grace with ourselves. And so thank you for just compiling what you've learned over the years and being willing to share it with us, because that's what's most important. Starting out that conversation, I mean, we learn things, we gain wisdom, but what is probably the greatest thing that you want parents to know and to understand about this early education process?
So yeah, I'm going to start out. Yeah, the most important piece of advice I wish that someone had shared with me when
Mm,
I was starting out, when my kids were kindergarten. I mean, when my kids were in 2, 3, 4-year old, and I was getting ready to go into the whole
yeah.
teaching process, I wish someone had told me, Julie, let them be little.
Oh,
Let
yes.
them be little.
Yeah.
Everything that
Yeah.
for my rest of whatever I talk about today, that
Hmm.
everything that I say hinges on those 4 words. Their
Mm,
time to be little is so fleeting.
It
They grow up
is.
so
Yes.
fast in your excitement, moms, as you're out there homeschooling and you got these littles and you want to get started and you're just gearing for it and you're so excited. Don't
Yeah.
push them over the grow up cliff. Let them
Mm.
be their precious little funny hyperactive selves. I miss my littles. I miss that age, and I wish
Oh,
I would have cherished that more than I did.
yeah. Yeah. That that is so, so true. I mean, because so many times we're told push, push, push.
Yep.
And so I love that countercultural advice, definitely, because yeah, we just need to keep saying it more and more.
Let them be little. So
Hmm.
our firstborns is the ones where we start that whole thing. So we
Uh-huh.
love them. They're like our pride and joy, those firstborns. And if you're watching this and you have kids, you have a firstborn. They're
Yeah.
the ones that have paved the way to this thing called parenting. They're the ones who
Hmm.
taught us how to get so excited about first steps, first words, first rolling over, for all the firsts. They're the
Yeah.
ones that have the biggest books, the biggest,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
keepsakes. But we are also the hardest on them.
Yeah.
We are the hardest. The road they pave, those firstborns, is actually a hard road. We
Hmm.
tend to want them to be the most behaved, the smartest, the cleverest, the
Hmm.
top of the pyramid, because they
Yeah.
are our reflection. How they do is kind of looks like, oh, especially when we're homeschooling, we're starting out in the homeschooling world. That firstborn, oh, they have to look good because it'll make me look good. And if they look bad, then I'm going to
Mm,
look bad. So we tend to push them. It's hard
right.
to hold back when we have a lot of dreams for them. And I was personally
Mm,
everything times 10. I
mm,
was so hard on my firstborn. I was so proud of him. I was so proud, and I just want everybody to know how smart he was. And I just kind of, I just,
mm,
I just I pushed him over the grow up cliff. And
mm.
I'm ashamed to say that I was that kind of a mom.
Oh, so was I.
Don't be like
I
me. It hurt him. It was hard
Mm,
on him. I sucked the
mhm,
joy of learning out of him. I put
mm,
performance over being a little person. So,
yeah, yeah.
let them be little.
Mhm.
Get
Yes.
off that comparison train that we get on where we are
Mm,
looking at, oh, my friend's child is doing this and my child is not. That means my
yes.
child has somehow failed. Don't do it. Don't compare. The others in your church, they're your kids. Don't worry about them. You've got yours.
Mm,
Yours, however God created that little person, just
yeah.
that's who they are. And
Mm,
the other pitfall that I did was I compared them to me. Well, I was reading at this point, or I loved this at this point. Why isn't my child doing that? My husband was gifted in math. Why isn't my child in that doing that? And so you kind of tend to place expectations, especially on that firstborn, of
yeah.
us, who we were, and they're not us. They are a combination plus
Exactly.
other things, and we
Mhm.
just have to let up, ease up, quit, and so much of it is pride. It was for
Yes.
me. It was
Oh,
so
yeah.
much pride, and
Mm.
if I could take pride and I could just throw it out the window, it would be so much better off. Get off the grow up
Mhm.
train. Let your kids be little. That grow up train, that comparison train forces them to grow up.
Yeah, it certainly does. But how do we make that change? I mean, it's so ingrained in us, because all of us that haven't, really been instructed on how to change that will follow that same road. So, do you have any advice on that?
Uh, letting them be little. So last year I was at a convention, and it was for struggling readers, and I had a
Mm,
mom that was in the room, and most of the people that come to my talks are, you know, third, fourth, fifth grade kind of and up. They're not a
mm,
lot of families with little. Some of them are, but most of them are not.
yeah.
So that's kind of my assumption, is that I've got, upper elementary kids and families in the room. So
Hmm.
this lady raised her hand, and she's concerned about her child because her child doesn't want to read, doesn't want to learn to read. And
Hmm.
so after I talked to her in the session, and after the session, she came up and she was just tears, just so upset, so worried.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and I was giving her lots of advice because, I was trying to help her, and I was giving her so many ideas. And then
Right.
as the course of the conversation goes on, I somehow asked her, I said, well, how old is your child?
Mm-hmm.
She was 4. She was 4
Oh.
years old, and mom was upset because the child didn't want to learn to read. And she
Mm.
was having a panic attack over her
Hmm.
4-year-old. And mom, if your 4-year-old doesn't want to learn to read, that is okay. If they're
Right.
balking at letters, that
Exactly.
is okay. They don't
Mm.
have, they're too little. Let them be little. They are
Yeah.
communicating to you by their behavior and that they're not ready.
They're not
They're
ready.
just not ready.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
So
That.
we have to throw pride out, ease up, forget trying to compete.
Mm.
Just,
Hmm.
yes. The
Yeah.
number one subject your littles need to study is play.
Oh, yes. So good. I agree.
That's the number
Mm-hmm.
one subject. If for this
Yeah.
age, kindergarten, preschool, younger preschool, first
Mm-hmm.
kindergarten, first, second grade, the number one subject is play. And you go, well, second graders, yes, they need to play too. It's important for
Mm-hmm.
2-year-olds. It's important for 3-year-olds, 5-year-olds. It's important for
Mm.
6 and 7. It's important for
Yes.
me. I love playing with my kids. I love playing.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So play. I mean, we've talked about this on our broadcast before, but I really want you to focus on it for this, broadcast, especially because we push it. And so can you really talk about that importance of play and enjoying playing with our children too? Because I think sometimes we've lost that art in our own lives. And coming back to around to grasping that.
Yep. Play is important for healthy brain development. It's the
Mm,
foundation of learning on so many levels.
yeah.
Reading skills and math skills all are born out of play. Play
Mm,
helps children gain in areas of imagination and
yeah.
creativity.
Mhm.
Without those, then children struggle to problem solve later in life. They're going to have struggle
Mhm.
because if they haven't learned how to imagine or create or think outside the box, they're going to
Right.
have trouble in reading and math.
Yeah.
Play teaches cooperation. It teaches
Mm.
sharing. It teaches peer learning. How do we get along with each other in life?
Mhm.
It increases their language skills. Have you ever sat and listened to a little girl holding her baby doll in her arms and talking
Oh,
to it and
yeah. Uh-huh.
practicing all of the language that mommy uses with them? They are redoing it with their babies. It's physically healthy.
Exactly. Mm.
They need it. It gets them moving and grooving. We want our little people to sit quietly in their chairs with their feet planted on the floors, and they're not able.
Right.
That's not their thing. Play
Mm.
lets them move and groove and get all that wiggle out and get all that giggle out
Exactly.
and get all that
Oh.
action out. It teaches them
Mhm.
spatial awareness. My little
Yeah.
girl has epilepsy, and when she was in the orphanage, they made her sit on a couch. She had to, because they didn't want her falling and having seizures because she had seizures all the time. So they made her sit
Oh,
on the couch for the 3 years that she was there. She never was allowed off the couch. They kept her there
wow.
because that kept her safe. And so she
Mm.
had a really hard time when she came out with the whole spatial awareness stuff
Oh,
because
yeah.
she had to learn all of it. She's really great now, but it took a
Mhm.
while. Fine motor, gross motor skills, all of those were
Yeah.
hampered because she didn't get to move and groove.
Right.
So
Yeah. We forget
so
about those things, don't we?
play is really important. It should be an integral part of your school day. So, like,
Mm.
it's not an
Mhm.
afterthought. It's not
Right.
like, oh, well, I'll just not to play, but I'm going to do school. Play
Mhm.
is school. And that's a hard concept for people, but the play is school. And there's two types of play, there's unregulated play and there's regulated play.
Oh, can you talk about that?
So unregulated play is free time. It's just do
Yeah.
nothing time. It's just go have fun,
Mhm.
go out, run around. It's not electronic time. And
Yeah.
it's not TV. Play
Mhm.
is playing, and it's not telling them what to play. It just plays. It allows the child to be little. And
Mm.
remember, we
Mhm.
are letting them be little. Unregulated play
Yeah.
gives children the time to freelance, to think up pretend worlds, to create, to build, to just be. And that's unregulated play.
Yeah, and I just recently read too that there's been a new study out that said unregulated play actually has been proven to create new brain cells. And so we can actually build the brain through unregulated play and not just the neurodevelopmental, pathways. So important. I'm so glad you touched on that. So the difference then, so we have unregulated play. What is regulated play then? What would that incorporate?
Regulated play teaches through play. So it's now
Okay.
it's more of a mom oriented, or it's a designed play. Every
Okay.
lesson for this age range, kindergarten through second grade, should include regulated play. Kids are doers. Kids want to do. They thrive on doing. My
Yeah.
students, they come to my class, even if they're not in this age range, even if they're older, they want to do. They
Yeah.
come to do. They don't come to fill out worksheets. They don't come to listen to dry
Right.
lectures. They want to
Mm.
experience the lesson hands-on, active.
Mm.
Regulated play is how you teach reading, math, science, history. That's how
Mm.
you teach those things. It
Right.
includes painting and coloring and drawing and
Mm.
Play-Doh and gluing and cutting. It means giving them tools to create, pulling stuff out and directing their play. You can hand them props and tell them to reenact a story.
Yeah.
You can pull out blocks and tell them to create a pyramid. You can give them paper towel rolls and and toilet paper rolls and tell them to build a marble maze. You can give
Yeah.
them Play-Doh and tell them to form their letters. You can give them paint and tell them to illustrate a story. So you're giving them tools and you're designing their play around that. Regulated play makes learning fun. It makes it fun. Regulated play can be done all day, every day, driving in the car. Find the
Mm.
letter M. How many M's can we find as we're driving down the road? Counting the stairs as you climb, walking through the shopping center, reading the labels, finding things that, as you're going through the shops, let's find all the red cans. Let's find all the blue cans, things like that. Finding colors, whatever you
Yeah.
have them do. On top of that, let them
Mm.
experiment. Let them
Oh,
get
yeah.
messy. So I've just given them all those paper
Mm.
towel rolls and we've made a marble maze. Now they
Uh-huh.
can take those paper towel rolls and move into unregulated play where they can just do whatever they want to with it. And that's important.
Oh, yes. Yeah. To that continue that education, that's kind of that exploratory moving beyond where you've taken it and then allowing them to use that learned knowledge to then build on it on their own. So you're incorporating that multi-sensory, just the dynamics of hands-on and experimentation and just making it fun in general.
Yep.
Yeah.
So when I was in college, I was working on a piece of when I was in college getting my education degree at elementary, I had to take an elementary art class.
Hmm.
And it wasn't an art class for kids. It was an art class. It was an adult art class on how to teach elementary art to children. So we're learning how to teach art to kids. So the
Okay.
professor was this really short, little, cute, little eccentric lady. She had full of pep and she was just extremely artistic and creative. And
Hmm.
her mantra to us was to provide tools for the kids to be creative, but don't
Hmm.
tell them how to do it. Just give
Ah.
them an open-ended. So one day she
Hmm.
came into class and she had this great big huge box of junk. It's
Hmm.
one of those just rick-rack junk in the box. She had
Yeah.
bottle caps and she had little everything you could think of. Everything that she
Hmm.
collected over the years it was a massive box. Scraps of this, scraps of that. If you're an art teacher, you're going to have a lot of it. Beads,
Mm.
jewels,
Oh,
treasures, toy
yeah.
parts, paper clips, anything. Okay. So she handed each of us a round piece of cardboard,
Hmm.
scissors and glue, and said, "Now make a pizza."
Huh.
And we had to take whatever was in the box, and we had to
Mhm.
create a pizza out of it. And we were
Oh.
college students, and we were, we all knew each other. We were all in the same classes together, and we're sitting around a
Mhm.
box of junk, and we start laughing, and we start having the best time. It was probably one of the most memorable classes I ever had.
Huh.
Individual classes. We had so much fun making our pizzas. And by the time we were done, everybody's pizza was uniquely different. And
Yeah.
I learned a really powerful lesson that day, because if she had given us an example, if she had shown us a pizza, she said,
Mm.
"I want you to make a pizza," and had held up a pizza for us to make, we
Right.
all probably would have emulated parts or a lot of what she did. But
Mm.
because she just said,
Exactly.
"Make a pizza," we were
Mhm.
free to create in a very open-ended way. I still
Yeah.
have my pizza. I still
Oh.
have it in a file up in my my education stuff, because
Hmm.
it was just such a cool activity. So one of the other things that I learned was that from her was that if you have to make a sample, because sometimes you do have to show the children what to do, if you have to make a sample, make a really bad one.
Oh.
Make your sample really bad. Like, and I do that when I teach when in any class that I teach, my samples are always really pitiful. They are just kind of, this is kind of what I want it to look like, but not much. And
Right.
moms and dads, when we create, when we try to show our kids, or when we're doing stuff with them, and anything that we do, and what we create is perfect, then what it ends up doing, it ends up putting this pressure on your child to be perfect too. So
Right.
if what I give them as a sample is perfect, then my children are going to, I've raised a bar that is too high for them to reach, especially our kindergarten, first, second graders who are struggling to cut paper and struggling to glue, and the globs of glue are on there, and they are never going to have what you've just created. And if yours is perfect, then they're going to feel bad in their little souls because they can't measure up. But if we have to show them an example, then we have to be like, just as like, mommy made this and it's not very good, so you do, and you don't have to do yours like mine. That is my other mantra. You never have to copy me. You can do whatever you want. Just kind of, we're making this, you can kind of do it like that, and that frees them so much to just be creative.
Yeah, that's a really, really good advice. Because we can pull in our pride, our own pride. I can do this well. So let me show my child what they can attain, if they do really well. But it's not a competition. We're trying to nurture and develop them, and to really highlight their unique talents and their ability to learn and grow. And I can't thank you enough for sharing about that, because we do. And it's so unwise of your teacher to have given something that was recognizable to all of you, a pizza, and yet there is no one pizza that's ever the same. And so that made it the perfect example, because so maybe somebody has veggie, somebody has pepperoni. Those pizzas in general are different, but they're all considered pizzas. So just to have that mentality as we're teaching things, that there's no one perfect example of anything, truthfully. The variety within a sphere of knowledge, or an example, is much more freeing, and the learning potential that you create from that is so much better.
Absolutely. So my one son spent 11 years in an orphanage, and they did crafts in the orphanage, but they were really mindless crafts. Every single one had to be exactly the same. So every coloring page had to be colored to the exact coloring pictures. He came, so everything was and he lived with that for 11 years, and he was very very OCD, very exacting, and they trained him to be that way. So he came home to me, who had a art teacher who was eccentric, and who likes to think outside the box and tries to teach her kids how to think outside the box. And he really struggled. I would just give him a basic coloring picture, but I wouldn't tell him or show him what the picture was supposed to be like. What the pictures were, and he would freak. He'd be like, but I don't know what color to color the shirt. I don't know how to color the pants, whatever color you want. But you have to show, no, I'm not. You just do whatever you want. It's okay. His situation was extreme, but we, in our desire to be perfect, we bind our kids. We frighten them. We tell them, you have to stay inside the lines. And we reward them when they stay inside the lines, instead of, easing up and okay, it's okay if it goes outside the line. It's okay. And we tell them bananas are yellow, so they must be yellow on our paper. But when it comes to art, and art is the means for moving into a lot of other areas of learning. You're going from art into math, into reading, into all of these things. When it comes to art, and we're teaching our kids to be creative. So hippos do not have to be gray. Flamingos can be green. Elephants can have spots, and that's really hard for type A people. That's
Yeah.
really hard for us because we want them to put everything in the box exactly like it's supposed to. And
Right.
if the directions say put a check and your child puts an X, then we want to tell them, no, you're supposed to put a check. And they've put an X, and they've thought outside the box. They've put it, and it's really hard. It's really hard to let them be little. Let
Right.
them maybe not do it perfectly. Creativity is an essential tool for a child's healthy development. It's okay to get messy. It's okay to make art out of shaving cream. It's okay to dance in a mud puddle. It's okay to finger paint. And it's also okay to knock over the tower that you just built.
Oh, yes. Yes. That is so true. And yeah, we definitely need to hear that. So thank you so much. That's so good.
So play is a serious subject. It really is. It has many elements. You can see their little brains going into high gear when they play. As they play, they're developing an understanding of the world and how it works. For them, it's just being a child. But for us, it should be the number one subject for our littles. It should be your number one subject, mom, dad. That's your number one subject. It's not overrated. Please don't discount it.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for, really spending a good amount of time on this and starting this conversation with this, because it is so crucial. And the things that we see and the experts I've talked to, a lot of them say a lot of the issues we see cropping up with kids later on in their learning progress is because play was not highlighted enough. And those different developmental stages were skipped because play was skipped. And then we run into a whole plethora of problems afterwards because we didn't focus on this. And so, yeah, we have one of our viewers on Facebook said, "Ooh, as a child of the late 70s, 80s art instruction, I struggle with this too." So we understand. We're glad to be your tribe. You're not alone. So we get it. So if play is the number one subject, what's number two then?
Reading. Reading. It's important. It's the tool they're going to need to use for the rest of their lives. Yeah. But I'm going to say this. Reading is too often our litmus test of intelligence.
Oh,
it was mine.
Yes.
I put way too much pressure on my kids. Each child, mom and dad, is going to blossom in reading at different times.
Yes.
Go slow. You are not on a speed train. Let your kids off the hook. If they read early, don't go crowing to your neighbors.
Oh,
my child is reading at age 4, because your child's friend who isn't reading yet is developing on a different train, and they're developing in areas where your child is probably not. The foundation of reading, though,
so good. Yeah.
is reading to your children. So especially for special needs kids, especially because a lot of families that are tuning in, keep reading to your kids. Read. I have a little girl who's special needs. We read to her all the time. She's 11 and she's starting to read. And so much of the words that she's reading are words that we're reading to her all the time. Books, easy books for those littles, the repetitive kind, rhyming,
that drove us crazy,
Dr. Seuss, nursery rhymes. I love the new series by Mo Willems with Elephant and Piggy. They are awesome books. My little makes us read those to her over and over and over again. Simple words, high frequency words. They memorize those books. Memorizing those books is a reading. It's a pre-reading skill.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
You're reading with joy. You're reading with expression. You're reading with gusto, and you're filling your child with the written word.
Oh, that's so good. I've never heard that before, but I remember being young and memorizing books and just how much joy it brought me, even though I didn't know what the words, were exactly on the page. And so that just resonates with me so much. Can you say something about just that joy of reading with children? Because I think sometimes we forget that. We're just like, we should probably read.
No, reading should actually be a part of your school day. It should be like in the same way that play is cemented in as part of your schedule, so should reading. Reading should be a cemented in part of your schedule. When I taught school, I read to my students every day. We had a cemented in reading time, and that was their favorite time, sitting on the floor and listening to me read stories to them. Don't think that your reading stops when your child starts reading. It doesn't.
Mm,
Reading books with your children should continue through elementary and into middle
yeah.
school and beyond, because you're
Mm-hmm.
helping them process so much as they're reading. They're processing language, they're processing vocabulary, they're
Right.
processing ideas and concepts and morals and everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did a lot of companion reading even in high school with my kids, and it kind of gave them that little bit to just kind of sit back and like you said, process and learn, and allow my reading to just kind of help them with especially those more difficult vocabulary words and those types of things. So completely agree. It just shouldn't stop. So what else do you have?
Okay, you're going to sing to them. Again,
Ah,
singing is like foundational for reading and math. It really is. If
mm,
you're like, I got these kindergarten, first, second graders, what am I going to, part of your day should be music. It teaches
mm,
rhythm, it teaches beat, it teaches cadence, it teaches vocabulary.
mm.
Learning music, listening to songs, the kids are learning vocabulary.
Oh
Children learn to
yeah.
memorize through music. So many
Yes.
lessons can be taught through music, especially at the little's age. You sing, sing, sing to your kids. Listen to music. Have it playing as you play, as you cook, as you
Mm,
ride in the car.
mhm.
Immerse your children in music. Nursery rhymes put to music. Rafi is awesome. So many good songs that Rafi does. Bible verses put to music. My
Yes.
children knew so much scripture because of music. All of my
Mm,
3 kids that are special needs English as a second language, it's been
yeah.
music that has helped them to learn a lot of vocabulary that because they're listening to in the music all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Music is just so it's so essential to the core of who we were created to be. I mean, we were made to have that melody and that rhythm and so yes, totally agree. And you can't walk away from something that you it's caught in your mind. It
Nope,
just
you
catches
remember it.
and you remember it. And so
Yeah.
yeah, that's so important.
So when you finally start formal reading, because you've read to them, you're singing music to them, they're learning lots and lots of pre-reading
Mm,
concepts in both of those things, plus with your play. Reading should include 3 basics: learning to read, and that is the actual learning to read process,
mm,
spelling, and handwriting. Um, and
yeah.
there's a lot of good programs. I don't recommend specific programs to people. I will talk privately
Mm,
to people, but not in public. But you want to find a program that encourages children through doing hands-on fun,
yes.
music, active, engaging activities. Make sure the readers in the curriculum that your child is doing, that you've picked for them, are engaging. Nothing
Yes.
kills a
So
child's
true.
love for reading more than boring readers,
Mm,
especially when
mhm.
they move past that point where they've actually started reading and
Yeah.
they're continuing to read those boring readers. You're gonna kill
Oh,
that
yeah,
candle. Gonna blow it out.
exactly.
I
Yeah.
am a I am a phonics mama. I
Mm,
believe kids learn best through phonics. When I was in college, phonics was a bad word. We
mm,
weren't even allowed to use it.
huh,
I was just not. But I didn't drink that Kool-Aid. I absolutely
mm,
have always believed that phonics is the way that kids learn the best.
mm.
40 years later, phonics is actually coming back in vogue in the public school system, which is just cracking me up. I
Oh,
taught
yeah.
first grade for a number of years, and here's what I learned when it came to reading. When the
Hmm.
children came into my classroom, they were all over the place in terms of reading. Some
Oh,
didn't
I'm
even know their
sure.
letters and
Yeah.
sounds.
Mhm,
Some knew their letters and sounds, but that was all they knew.
mhm.
Some were reading a little tiny bit, like simple, easy words,
Right.
and that had a few each year who were reading on a third to fifth grade level. So I had like
Yep.
this
Oh, yeah.
huge
That's
gap. But what I always found by the end of that year, because between the ages of 5 and 7, there's a huge thing that happens with the majority of kids. The
Hmm,
vast majority of my students were reading on a middle, second grade, and up level. And
really?
that's how most of my kids tested. And most of those kids were reading in the baby stage of reading.
Mm,
And what was even more interesting is that a chunk of kids every year had caught up with the early readers. So I
hmm.
usually had 3, 4, 5 kids that were now caught up with those kids that were reading on a third to fifth grade reading level.
Wow.
I did a combination of phonics, but I also taught the kids the high frequency words, because
Yes.
those are words that they're
Mhm.
going to see in their books.
Right.
And I used the curriculum the school bought, but I also supplemented with lots and lots of learning centers and games.
Which goes back to what you were talking about earlier. It's that play that is so important. That's really cool,
Yep.
and encouraging too at the same time.
So I knew a mom, she was a friend of mine. She had her children in a school where the school's philosophy was that you don't teach reading until third grade.
Wow.
And it was a really expensive school in our area. It's an elite school. And they paid a fortune for their child to go there for preschool, kindergarten, and first grade. And the school believed that play was the foundation for learning. So all their education was based around play, but they never did any formal teaching of reading or math during that time period. So her husband was a doctor, and he was really like concerned because his son was now finished with first grade and could not read a word in a book. And all his peers were reading, and he was really worried and nervous about his son because it was his oldest, mind you. And so he put his foot down and he said, he is not going back to this school. He is going to a school where they're going to teach my boy how to read. So they spent that summer trying to catch the child up, trying to catch them up because he was behind. And I put that in quotes. He was behind.
I know. Yes.
So
Thank you
they
for doing
worked
that.
really hard to do that. Well, when he went to second grade, he wasn't ready. He was not at the level of any of the other kids in the class. He was behind because they had, all these years with a proper reading program, and this child had nothing, except play. Well, you fast forward to his graduation from high school, and he graduated number 3 in his class, and he went on to college. All that play he did from preschool, kindergarten, first grade, it didn't hurt him one bit. It would not have harmed him if he had stayed there in second grade and learned to read in third grade. He blossomed in reading later, and it was fine. And that's why, to me, play is my number one subject. I go back to that.
Great. Yep.
Regulated play is the foundation for teaching reading.
Yes. Yeah. And I've heard that from like older teachers who were instructed with certain elements of childhood, just progression and play to know when to start teaching reading, because those were the crucial elements to have in place, not the sounds, not the recognition of the letters, but the actual movements and play of the child. And we have lost all that with these boxes of all the things that kids should know before reading should happen. And it's not about knowing, it's about that readiness, like you were talking about, and all of the things that we physically have to do. And it's physical. It's physical, and it's intellectual outside of that structured learning that creates that base that's so important.
So teaching reading, I made tons of activities, learning centers, games. I used to go to thrift shops. I found reading-based games. We did memory, bingo, Scrabble Junior, and the list goes on. We sang the phonics. We sang it. We played rhyme games. I did do worksheets with my own kids, and I did do worksheets at school, but it was not the primary reading means for how we learned. And the worksheets we did were fun and engaging.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's encouraging to our parents too, because we often think, well, I got to have the best program. But maybe the best thing to use is something you can find at a garage sale or that's already at your house for those types of things. And so, yeah. But, you said learning to read involves spelling and writing. So what about the spelling part?
So spelling and reading easily go hand in hand. They're pretty easy. Don't pick a spelling program that's separate from the reading program.
Really?
It makes sense for kids to learn to spell the words they're learning to read. And I'm a phonics-based reader. I'm a phonics-based speller. But they also need to learn those high-frequency words because they're going to use them a lot. So I tended to do both. And regulated play and spelling go hand in hand. Please don't just make your child write their spelling words and be done. That's like the most boring, awful, miserable existence.
It is. Great.
Get shaving cream and have them write them in that. Kinetic sand, Play-Doh. I love the refrigerator magnets. We used to do that all the time. Children love whiteboards.
Oh,
They
yeah.
love the write on wipe off boards. Have them
Mhm.
illustrate their spelling words. Okay, the word is cat. Let's draw
Oh.
cats and make it into a cat. Spelling can
Mm.
actually start later than reading unless your
Yeah.
child is ready to go. You don't have to
Mm.
start spelling right away. You can start, in first grade, I mean in second grade if they've
Mm.
started in reading
Mhm.
in first grade or whatever. You can take your time with it. I didn't usually start doing spelling with my students until they were actually reading, till they had jumped into the
Yes.
actual reading department before we started doing spelling. Slow and
Uh-huh.
steady wins the race. We're not on a
Mm.
grow up train. Spelling, they're going to get the words. You're not, it's like, I have to have this many words done in a certain amount of years. They're going to
Right.
learn most of spelling by just writing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I had the same mentality, and it really saved me a lot of frustration. So yeah, I completely agree. So what about handwriting?
So handwriting begins with early reading, writing their name,
Mm.
writing
Mhm.
their letters. They're going to have to, as they're learning to read, they do need to write their letters. They need to do simple words. They
Yeah.
need to do the block letters though. And I know that there's a huge
Mm.
push to skip the block letters and jump right to cursive in like kindergarten.
Oh.
That's not my train.
Mm.
The world is
Mhm.
written in
Yeah.
block.
No. Yeah.
Block letters are written, most of what the kids see at that age are block letters. And so to
Yeah.
jump right into cursive is you're making it harder for them to read.
Mm.
They need to learn how to write the block letters, and then they can do cursive in second or third grade. I do think they do need cursive because the world
Mhm.
is also written in cursive.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
even
Yeah.
just looking
Especially
around,
historical documents
well,
and
even just
things.
looking around
Yeah.
the screen here,
Oh,
Empowering
yeah.
Homeschool
Yeah.
Conversations is a combination of cursive and block letters, and kids need to
Mhm.
learn how to read that.
Right.
Okay, but moms and dads, don't be fussed if your child at this age is writing their letters backwards. That's normal. It is so
Yes.
normal for a kindergarten, first and second grade to put the B and the D and the P and the all of those letters backwards.
Right.
It don't You don't need to like put red marks on them. You've just done this terrible. Just remind them the B goes in
Uh-huh.
this direction, the D goes in this direction. And also, the other thing that we get so fussed over is they don't put their paper right. It's
Oh.
okay. If they've
Uh-huh.
got their paper upside down and backwards and they're using it, if you want to, if you're really ADHD about it, or OCD about it, then put a little X. This is where the front of the paper is. But I had fourth
Mhm.
graders who came to my creative writing class who still did it backwards and upside
Oh,
down.
wow.
Didn't get anything wrong. It's just, it is what it is. Kids don't, it's there. It's not a concrete thing. It's more of an abstract thing, honestly, and knowing which way this paper is supposed to go.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And we have a comment from another one of our viewers. She said, reading good literature, creative writing have been great for my guy who struggles with writing and spelling. Spelling's finally coming together at age 13.
Yep.
And so, yeah, like you said earlier, Julie, just when they're ready. And for each of our kids, that is different. And so yeah, just taking it as they can do it. So handwriting versus writing. This mom was talking
So
about
handwriting
the
is learning
writing.
to
Yeah.
form the letters. That's what we
Mm.
emphasize for our littles. Writing is when
Mhm.
a child puts their thoughts on paper. And
Yeah.
writing for this age is not anything more than just very, very, very simple. And this
Mm.
is where a lot of families, especially first and second grade, where we put too much pressure. This grade should not be writing paragraphs. They should not even be
Yes.
writing long sentences. They are
Mm-mm.
simple,
Mhm.
simple. They should not be worrying about grammar at this age.
Yeah.
Please don't worry about grammar. They shouldn't be having to worry about perfect handwriting. If we take their first words that they put down on that paper
Oh,
and we
yeah.
start red marking it, we're going to
Mm.
kill their writing spirits before they even start.
So true.
Um,
Yeah.
and a lot of
Mhm.
times you don't even have a clue what they've written. That's okay. It's just a bunch of letters that mean something to them. If they can read it to you, hurrah, thumbs up, that's awesome. If they want to dictate it to you and you write it down, that's the level, that's the
Mm.
grade where they are.
Yeah.
They
Yeah. That's
so
great. So creative writing then waits a while, I'm assuming,
Yep, I taught
Yeah.
creative writing for years to fourth to sixth graders, and that's actually where I think creative writing should start. Third,
Mm.
at the youngest, fourth grade, that's when they're ready. And a lot of my fourth graders were barely, especially the boys, were barely even ready then.
Yes, that's a
Some of them
good
had to wait
distinction to
until
make.
fifth grade. That writing a
Mm-hmm.
paragraph for a lot of fifth grade boys is very stressful. And so when you think
Yeah.
it in that terms, and we're trying to make our first graders write these paragraphs, please
Oh,
get off
yeah.
that. We're not
Yeah.
on that train. They're not even close to being on that train.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we've talked about playing, we've talked about reading. What's number 3?
Math. But you
Mm.
can interchange math and reading. Steve Demi
Huh.
would
Uh-huh.
interchange math and reading, but I put math reading first because that's my love. And
Right.
I
Yeah.
don't want to tell you what math to do. There are wonderful math programs out there. My word of advice is pick a math that fits your child's individual needs. Math should
Yeah.
be child specific, especially children that are
Mm.
special learners. You
Oh,
pick a
yeah.
math that's
I
going
think
to
we used a
fit
different
them.
one for each child. So,
Yep. And then
right.
math and regulated play go hand in hand. It
Oh,
begins with
yeah.
counting, with
Mm-hmm.
numbers. You're singing. You got those nursery rhymes, the reading books. You're
Right.
counting by ones. You're counting by twos, by fives, by tens, by 25s. Don't
Mm.
forget the 25s. My children learned all those through songs. Math
Yeah.
includes clocks. Our littles
Mm.
need to learn to read both digital and analog clocks.
Right.
Teach
Yeah.
them the analog clock. Get them a watch with the old-fashioned clock face on it. But
Mm-hmm.
take your time because clocks are super, super complicated. They really are complicated. And it takes a child a long time to understand how to read them. It's not a one
Mm.
time process. It takes several years for a lot of kids to grasp all the concepts of that thing that goes around and the other thing that goes around, all these little fives, tens, and 15s, and all of that on that clock.
Exactly.
So you
Yeah.
want to start slow and simple and you repeat. Because in math,
Mm.
especially, even in you're repeating everything that these kids need to learn. Math
Mm.
includes calendar time, graphing the weather. Don't forget to learn the
Right.
days of the week and the months of the year. And back to singing we
Mm.
go because that's how they learn a lot of that information.
Right. And so, like teaching that calendar and weather, I think that was always a struggle for me. When do I start that?
You can start it in preschool, but don't
Mm-hmm.
assume that if you've done it in preschool that they've got it. You need to do it in
Yes.
preschool, in
Uh-huh.
kindergarten, in first
Right.
and second grade. You're going to find the calendar, the weather, the clocks, all of that on every wall of every kindergarten through second grade classroom. And that you just repeat it
Oh,
over and
yeah.
over, ever again. Every math fact has to be taught over and over again. Math
Hmm.
includes shapes and sizes. You can put that on the same wall. All that can be learned during playtime. Math is in cooking. Math is in Legos.
Yeah.
Math is in board
Mm-hmm.
games. Math is everywhere you look.
Right. Yeah. So, what would be your biggest bit of wisdom when it comes to math?
Don't skip the first 20 lessons.
That's important. Yes.
No, so many parents think that, oh, my child already knows this, rip, sheet,
Oh,
throw it out.
yes. Yes.
Especially when your child is
Mm-hmm.
in first and second grade, we think that they're too easy. My kid doesn't need this. Um,
Oh, yeah.
don't skip those. Take your time with them
Mm-hmm.
because you might know them, but a lot of times your
Mm.
child needs to review and your child needs to feel good about themselves. And those
Yes.
first 20 lessons instill in your child a love
Mm-hmm.
for it and a pride for it that they need as they start getting into the lessons that are
Right.
harder, especially when your child is in first and second grade, and especially
Mm.
second grade. Don't rip
Yeah.
those lessons out. Do the book. If you don't finish
Mm-hmm.
the book, that's okay. Just make sure you start well.
Yeah. I know that is, and that um, just the confidence in themselves and how much of a builder that is, and they can go through them quicker, and that gets them spurs them on. You get that ball rolling, and that's when it makes everything else follow so much easier. So, how much time of day really should you spend on the reading and the math when you've got a little one?
For the littlest, 10, 15 minutes max, and you're
Mm.
incorporating regulated play in that. For first and
Okay.
second graders, a little more, an hour, and depend upon your child. That time
Mm.
again includes the regulated play, and again, you're incorporating into that. You're reading to them. That's part of your.
Mm.
So on top of it, you
Mhm.
want to read to them, and you want to give them play time. If they're in second grade, a little bit more, but you really, when I add up how much actual time when I was a first grade teacher I did with my students, it
Mm.
was probably 45 good quality minutes of reading and about that in math. with my students, and the rest of the time you're doing fun things, play, you're going out to recess,
Right.
you're doing calendar time and all that stuff, but the actual
Mm,
reading and the math part, you're doing probably that much. So
yeah. Oh, that's a good reminder. Yes. So what about like other subjects like science?
guided play. Everything should be done science with
Mm,
play. If you want to add it in, and you don't have to add science in, you don't have to do science at this age. But if you want to, it should be
mm,
experimental play. You're learning about animals. You're learning about the body. You're
mm.
learning about plants. All those things, but should
Right.
all
Yeah.
be fun, family affair, experimental, just
Hmm.
fun.
Right. Yeah. It's that just knowledge, that base that you're building.
Yep.
And what do you have to say about history then?
Well, history, if you've got that 20 minutes a block of reading time, that's when you
Mm,
can do some history. So you can add your
okay.
history in during your 20-minute of reading, which is actually cool because that would be like a Charlotte Mason or classical approach.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
which is what we are. So we encourage families of kindergarten through, I mean, preschool to second grade to read, and you can read history-based books. But
Oh
history
yeah.
is for hands-on. History is one of the best hands-on activities you can do.
Mm,
There's so much fun hands-on stuff. I've written 4 books full
mm.
of like 600 plus ideas on what you can do hands-on for history. So
Oh, that's
science
cool.
and history are
Yeah.
great for doing hands-on fun, regulated play stuff.
And I'm assuming
So
that bridges right into geography as well.
geography, yep, kids love doing maps. They love learning geography.
Mm,
They love globes.
mm-hmm.
They love it. When I taught at a Christian school, that was the favorite thing to do is geography.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Yeah. There's just so many things that you can do with all of that. And is there anything else that littles can do that you want to touch on?
cooking, cook with them.
Mm,
Cooking is really
mm-hmm.
fun. Don't do electronics. If I
Hmm.
had the last piece of advice, and it would be probably at the top of my top list of advice, is electronics. These kids don't need them.
Yeah.
Preschool,
Yeah.
kindergarten, first grade, don't use them. Just get them out of the
Mm,
house. Just
right.
they destroy play. They destroy
Mm-hmm.
brain cells. They eat up a child's desire to play. Those
Yeah, they
electronics,
do.
they rob them.
Mm-hmm.
Don't use electronics as a reward. Please
Mm,
refrain from that. A reward should be going out and playing, not you've just earned 15 minutes playing Minecraft. Um,
mm.
so that would be kind of how I would end. Just
Good advice.
play,
Yeah.
no electronics.
Yeah, those electronics, they creep in soon enough. And if you know it, if that's a habit already, I know it's super hard to break. But I hope in listening to what Julia had to say, and you did it so well. Just talking about the essential part of learning through the things that we sometimes discount, or try to just push through or set aside because we want to learn. And yet, that learning is so much happening in that unregulated play, and even through that regulated play that you were focusing on. So we just have a few minutes left, and I would love for you to talk with our audience a little bit about your resources at BiblioPlan.
So yeah, BiblioPlan is history and literature. So we are very reading based, literature based, which is why I like reading over math. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we incorporate geography, we incorporate Bible. We are very, very hands-on. So we everything we do, I want to try to. You are reading to your kids and you're learning history, but I want it to make
Right.
it. I want the kids to experience it. So we do. We have games, we have crafts, we have cooking. We have coloring books that the kids can color while they're listening to mom read. We have timelines they can
Mm,
make. We have maps that are very interactive that the kids can do. We actually now are on Zoom. So you can, and in
mm-hmm.
our Zoom classes, we do crafts. I was doing 2 Zoom
Oh,
classes
cool.
this morning, and we were doing crafts with the kids. I'm like, the kids are on one half my classes in Colorado this year, and I'm like, oh, you guys are in Colorado and I'm in Virginia, and y'all are making this awesome Coptic cross, and they're having the most fun doing glue and all that in my class. So yeah,
Uh-huh.
so we're a smorgasbord type of curriculum, so you can pick and choose what you want to do. And for
Mm.
the littlest kids, my advice is to go easy, simple, 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 and make it
Mm.
fun.
Yeah, yeah. And so if you're listening and you can't see the screen, the Julie's website is biblioplan.net. And if I'll put it in the description on our YouTube link as well. So you can just click on that after the show if you want to make it easier instead of trying to copy it off the screen and or try to spell it out as you're listening on the podcast. But yeah, you guys have some great resources, very comprehensive, historic, just history-based things, very hands-on, like she was talking about. And one of the reasons why we partner with you guys and recommend your curriculum, because we really are excited about the materials that you produce. They're so colorful and interactive.
Can I add one more thing real quick? I know we're almost out of time, but we do have on our website, we do have a whole section on our website on how you can adapt BiblioPlan for special needs, special learners, and also for gifted learners. So it's called Tips and Tricks, and we actually put out a little booklet that you can buy for like $6. It's really cheap. It's ebook, but it gives you all kinds of ideas on how to take our curriculum and adapt every single item that we have and make it adaptable for all ages, all grades, and all different learning styles.
Great. So, yes, I will make sure to put that link in the description as well, so that you can just click on that and go to that. That's an incredible resource. Not a whole lot of curriculum companies do that for you. So so thank you for taking the time to make that resource available to parents who are looking for options when they do have a learner that they're struggling to teach. And those are just amazing. So yeah, thank you so much. We have packed the hour, and you have shared some great information. I'm just super excited to have this information now available to our audience on video and podcast. And thank you all for joining us live. I know, our kids have lots of struggles, and like I said, we talked about this too, Julie. It's, we can have older kids and we can say, oh, I wish I would have, but start playing. Yep. Even if they're a teenager, start playing with them. It's not too late. And if you have the little ones, you're just catching this information from Julie, and I hope you run with it instead of saying, well, it kind of goes counter against what I've heard from everybody else. Well, try it. Definitely. I think the tables are turning. So thank you for bringing this to light again. Thank
you for having me. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been great. And so next week we will be continuing this topic of early education, preschool, and we're going to be talking about the importance of learning readiness. And so we're going to be building off a lot of what Julie was talking about. And then we talked about the hierarchy of learning earlier this month. And so just, making sure your kids are ready before we start pushing anything. And really, we shouldn't push at all, but even start teaching, because it ends up being frustrating for us and for them. And we want to take that frustration out as much as possible by making sure kids are ready when we do start teaching, because learning should be fun. And kids love to learn if we do it right. So yeah. Well, thanks so much again, Julie. And thank you all for joining us on this broadcast. It was great having you back. And I'm sure we'll have you back again. Yeah. And so have a blessed week, everybody. We are just so glad you are part of the SPED homeschool community. Just know that this broadcast was sponsored by viewers like you. To make a tax-deductible donation to SPED Homeschool, we are a 501c3 nonprofit. You can visit our website at spedhomeschool.com and click the donate button. And we appreciate that. That's what keeps our ministry going, as well as our sponsors, who are organizations like BiblioPlan, and we appreciate their continued support as well. So thank you all, and have a great week, and we'll see you next week at our regular time. 12:30 Central is when we'll be broadcasting next. So we'll see you then. God bless.